today's session. So, as I said, today is the last session of a four-part series called Entanglement, Emptiness, and Enlightenment. And I want to pick up where we left off at the last session. We finally, in that last session, had a lot of really good questions from all of you, from many of you. And one of the questions that was asked, sort of brought up as a concern, was this concept that I've been talking about, and that is prevalent in Buddhist cosmology, called beginningless time. And specifically for the questioner who brought this up, they said very transparently that they felt like the whole idea of beginningless time was, and I'm going to use an expression here, feels a little bit to them like a cop-out. That's an expression meaning that it doesn't really tackle the topic directly of the origins of the universe. And, you know, or the incalculable numbers of universes, or the multiverse, whatever we want to call it. So I want to talk a little bit about that. It's kind of important in the context of the rest of our discussion, and also what we've been discussing throughout the series. So I'm going to go to His Holiness's text, The Universe in a Single Atom, where he talks a little bit in more detail about this. And I think I want to zero in on it just for a moment. So to this question of sort of the origin of the universe, the Buddha said in a famous simile that he, and I'm not quoting him, I'm actually just looking at and reading from His Holiness's text, where the Buddha referred to such a person who asks a question like that as someone wounded by a poisoned arrow. Instead of letting the surgeon pull the arrow out, the injured man insists on first discovering the caste, name, and clan of the man who shot the arrow, whether he's dark, brown, or fair, whether he lives in a village, town, or city, whether the bow he used was a longbow or a crossbow, whether the bowstring was fiber, reed, hemp, sinew, or bark, whether the arrow shaft was of wild or cultured wood, and so forth. So this is kind of a way of saying that the Buddha, in refusing to answer this question, really was saying, like, let's not worry about such metaphysical questions, as it kind of gets directly in the way of any one of us individually, like sort of moving forward on a path to liberation, which we'll talk a little bit about in today's session. And then sort of another take on this directly relates to what I was talking about in the last session, which is Nagarjuna's argument that answering questions like this get us potentially into, I'll call it movement down the rabbit hole of the whole presupposition of what we're trying to look to change, which is our moment by moment experience of everything having intrinsic self-fixed quality, inherent self-existence, as it's called in Buddhism, and losing the point about how everything is simply dependent originating, arising dependently. And that sort of leads us into a deeper entrenchment in the belief in solid inherent existence. So hopefully that makes some sort of sense in that, you know, that's another interpretation of like why the Buddha might not have wanted to engage in this question, because we only have available to us conceptual time, based in time and space reality, to process anything as a human. And the whole idea of beginningless time, or the origin of the universe, from a Buddhist cosmology point of view, is actually something that can be conceptualized, but ultimately exists beyond conceptual reality. So it's sort of a very difficult line to walk. And Dharma teaching and practices can be very tricky with that in mind. And, I think it's also just for us to hear it. Again, it's in the book, The Universe in a Single Atom, what the so-called unanswered questions are that were posed to the Buddha skillfully by different practitioners at the time that he was alive, where they tried to get him to answer this question. So in Tibetan Buddhism, it's known it's known as the 14 unanswered questions. So I think almost as a mini, in the moment, not meditation, but reflective 5 minutes here. I'll just read each one of them just to give us a sense of what we're talking about in terms of what the Buddha tried to avoid. So here are the 14 unanswered questions. Are the self and the universe eternal? Are the self and the universe transient? Are the self and the universe both eternal and transient? Are the self and the universe neither eternal or transient? Do the self and the universe have a beginning? Do the self and the universe have no beginning? Do the self and the universe have both beginning and no beginning? Do the self and the universe have neither beginning nor beginning? Does the Blessed One, we're talking about the Buddha here, exist after death? Does the Blessed One not exist after death? Does the Blessed One both exist and not exist after death? Does the Blessed One neither exist or not exist after death? Is the mind the same as the body? Are the mind and body two separate entities? So those are the 14 unanswered questions. They're famous to Buddhist practitioners who, are especially ones that are interested in this. And it's not something that goes unaddressed in the Buddhist tradition, even though the Buddha didn't answer these questions. Many great early Buddhist scholars and saints provided us with a conceptual frame of reference for the origins of the universe. And I had mentioned in the last couple of sessions, in context of what we were talking about, two of those Buddhist cosmological systems, one being the Abhidharma and the other being the Kalachakra. And they are something also I just want to revisit because they help frame what we've already discussed, and to this question, maybe put it more into focus in terms of why the Buddha didn't answer this question. So both these systems, the Abhidharma and the Kalachakra, are cosmologies that frame our universe as being one among countless world systems, a billionfold, just sort of to convey the notion that there isn't, in a Buddhist cosmology, there isn't one universe that starts, persists, and ends, and then starts over again. There are countless, if you will, I'm using a conceptual word here, overlapping universes. World systems is a phrase that's used in English translations of this idea that comes across both in the Abhidharma and the Kalachakra. And I had already mentioned that within each one of these world systems, already mentioned in the last session, that there are 4 segments to this cycle, this endless cycle, the segment or stages of emptiness, formation, abiding, and finally destruction. That's the pattern that each one of the world systems go through, which is in essence what each one of us go through as an individual entity, and all sentient beings go through. We go through this same cycle. There's an intimate connection. We go back to that concept we discussed in the first session. Where do we find this interconnectedness between all of us? And, you know, we talked already about that to some degree, those 4 stages. And as I mentioned, they're really long. and during the course of one of these cycles is when sentient beings become part of that world system. That's a whole topic, and we could do a whole series of courses on a whole course with multi-part sessions on that if we wanted to. But at the heart of this Buddhist cosmology, there's definitely this idea of multiple world systems, infinitely more than the grains of sand in the river Ganges, as it's traditionally thought of, you know, incalculable. The most important thing to understand here is that this means that from this Buddhist cosmological point of view, that the universe has no absolute beginning. It's unfathomable. It goes beyond the conception that we can hold in our minds. So all of that ties back to that question that was asked, beginningless time. It's only meant to sort of infer what is happening on a continual basis as it relates to our presence in existence. Not so much like literally answering the question conceptually about the origins of a universe, more to describe the cycle of stages that go on continually, endlessly, without beginning, without end. So I thought it was important to sort of frame that in a tighter way, because the way I answered that question last time, although not misinformed, was I kind of jumped all over the place a bit. So I think that's some place that I wanted to start, and this kind of informs us in terms of you know, where can we go from here in terms of connecting the dots of the 3 E's that I present in this course, because we're in our last session here, and I do want to bring it to a crescendo and into focus. You know, so everything that I just talked about, if we live in the conceptual realm of time and space, and we can't really experience things the way they really are, then does that mean that we've sort of reached the end of our exploration, and is there nothing else that we can really do to improve this condition? And the answer to that is no. I mean, the exploration of this question of the origins of the universe and how we exist in that cycle of dependently arising moment by moment reality of coming into existence, sustaining existence, and then going out of existence, and that cycle repeating, which I talked a bit about last time in trying to frame out what happens in the wheel of life cosmology. Then how can we really work with that? What can be done to sort of improve that condition, that lack of connectedness? And actually, that's one of the main goals of Buddhist practice. And in its sort of end game or ultimate form, that's what we call the goal of traveling a path that at the end of that path, we reach what is called a state of enlightenment, the 3rd E in our title. So we're going to further explore in the rest of this class today how I'm connecting these 3 E's that are the subject, the title of this course. So if you've listened to the previous sessions, what I'm going to say here in sort of summation form will make some sense. If you haven't, then you're going to have to like sort of put up with me for a moment. So as previously discussed in the first session and the second session to some degree, we talked specifically about the science of modern cosmology and astronomy. And clearly that shows us that literally 100% of what makes us up individually, if you will, and also makes up everything in existence, is all that there is. It's all the same. There's nothing more than that. And that further, modern cosmology tells us that it all started at a moment of what is called in science, that moment of singularity, that moment right before, again, I'm conceptualizing here, so you have to bear with me, that moment right before time and space came into existence. And again, we talked about that in some detail in the first course, in the first session. And then in the second session, we further explored another modern scientific point of view called quantum mechanics. And through our exploration of some of the key concepts that are in quantum mechanics, we talked a lot about superposition and non-locality, where we discover that all that exists, past, present, and future, from a time-space continuum point of view, is always present in the form of what? Potential. Not having a fixed, as quantum mechanics calls it, not having a fixed location or velocity. So based on those two important observations, one should ask the obvious questions. To me, the obvious question is, why can't any of us access all of existence and be at one with it? Have that interconnectedness be our moment by moment experience? Why does that not happen? Maybe for some of you it does. It certainly doesn't for me. And the answer is, and we talked a lot about this in the last session, is that our moment by moment experience of life, in that we're stuck in our own self-made, I use that expression, walled off container, that phrase that His Holiness talks about in the universe in a single atom, that we mistakenly experience as being inherently existent, that everything we experience, if we look at it closely, we are mistakenly experiencing it as having some fixed inherent existence, and not as it really is, which is that it is simply every single moment of everything that goes on in the universe, including in ourselves, is simply dependently arising. That's it. And, we talked a little more detailed about this in terms of answering the question, well, how does that actually occur? And we talked about that it occurs through the process of coming into being in that stage cyclical manifestation that we talked about just a moment ago and last week in more detail in the system of the Kali Chakra. Coming from that state of voidness or emptiness or singularity, where our consciousness, our subtle consciousness, starts to move, literally move in the realm of time, space, and conception. But here's the most important aspect of that happens in a mistaken way. How? And we talked about this last week. It happens through the force of our previously planted kleshas, or karmic seeds, that ripen in the form of projecting karma. We talked about all this, what projecting karma is, that karma that we carry forward with us, again, since beginningless time. And then we talked about, well, then how does that projecting karma occur? And we talked about this in the context of the part of the Wheel of Life cosmology. The process of our consciousness, mistakenly partaking in the experience of all things via the three poisons, using the lens of the first of the big three poisons, the lens of ignorance, which is not clearly seeing that all things, including self, lack any inherent fixed quality, and rather it fixing the quality of inherent self-existence to ourselves and to all phenomena. And by that, we constantly partake in the other two of the big three poisons. Through that, we either grasp onto things or we practice aversion to other things. Basically, we like or dislike things. And what develops from there is discrimination, the breaking down of unity, of interconnectedness, and that walling off process that I alluded to. So as a consciousness does this, as I just said, it automatically cuts oneself off from all others as we plant those kleshas or karmic seeds of our future projecting karma. Projecting karma is that karma that then ripens into a specific form that we decide to take as a self that's self-centered, ignorantly grasping onto some things and averting other things. This is the operational process that creates that mistaken way of experiencing life. It's this mistaken, inherently self-existing I of wants and doesn't want, things we want and don't want. And this completely creates in us this reality where we completely miss the potential experience of connectedness to all things that is present, as superimposition and non-locality and quantum mechanics tells us, and as modern cosmology even tells us, is there simply waiting for us to experience. And in doing so, we start this endless cycle. From a Buddhist point of view, it's an endless cycle of moving through these stages of voidness, arising, existing, and then going out of existence in a mistaken, walled off manner or walled off container. And in Buddhism, we call that the cycle, the 12 steps of dependent origination. And so this is really what I'm trying to pull together in this course in terms of trying to explore science, modern science's view into this, which is interesting because it gives us sort of an external, scientific, empirically based, non-subjective view of how things are in the universe and also in ourselves, especially cosmology. And then also the exploration of Buddhist concepts where they intersect with those modern disciplines of science in the form of talking about the concept of emptiness and also enlightenment. So to talk a little more about this, because it has to be underscored, it's a lot of like sort of summation to pour on top of all of you. If it is the case that we are sort of cutting ourselves off to all the potential that we can engage with in the universe, all other phenomena and all other sentient beings. And it's not that we don't connect with other sentient beings, we do. We're doing that right now. But is it in a way that has no suffering? And is it in a way that has real, I'll call it permanent, interconnectedness? No, it doesn't. We all know that, because even when we get to the end game of what happens in any one of our lives or lives of any sentient being, there is, in the end of that cycle we just talked about, there's the death process. And the death process is something that we do alone, not in connection with all others. So really the focus here is to try to see that all the troubles that are within ourselves, all of them, we could talk about the what are called the 84,000 mental afflictions that the Buddha articulated. But we'll just sort of concretize it by talking about something we all experience: isolation, loneliness, anxiety, depression. Again, all of the 84,000 mental afflictions and emotions come from this mistaken way of experiencing every single moment. It's what the Buddha called his first noble truth, the truth of suffering existence. So that it begs the question, so how does one change that? Can one change that? And from a Buddhist point of view, there are two, what we call wings, as wings on a being that can fly, an eagle, a falcon, a bird. And these are the two, what are called the two wings of endeavor in Buddhist practice. And they address this, and they bring to us a potential way to work with changing that suffering existence. First, and mostly what we've been exploring in the previous sessions is understanding how things really exist. It's all about that second E in the title of the course, emptiness, seeing that all things simply arise in dependence on other things: the observer, the process of observing, and the observed. We talked about those three aspects of every single moment by moment experience. That's what is happening. Once one has that frame of reference to work within, and one can then start to reduce one's relentless experience of grasping onto things and being adverse to others. And this understanding emptiness is what we call in Buddhism developing, when we can create that reduction of mistaken moment by moment experience, we call that taking on right view. Right view being understanding the true nature of what is happening, what is really happening. And then add to this, as we discussed last week, and I was talking about a bit this morning, the rudimentary view of the three poisons, how karma works, and the resulting realization that suffering existence doesn't have to continue, that there is a way or a path one can take to end this repeated cycle. Once that comes on one's horizon consciously, then one can experience that knowledge of wisdom or emptiness that moves us. We talked about this last week, that moves us, that actually compels us and motivates us to feel what? To feel compassion towards ourselves and others, that we are living in this sort of mistaken way of experiencing things that causes suffering, the 84,000 mental afflictions, and that there is a way to change that. We understand where it comes from, which is our mistaken way of experiencing things with our consciousness. That's the Buddha's second noble truth, is understanding where suffering comes from, but to understand that there can be an end to suffering is the third noble truth of the Buddhas. And then the fourth noble truth is understanding that there's a path that one can take to change that. And that's really where I wanted to take us in this exploration in this course, is to see that. And so this idea of like, what is compassion is really that internal motivation, that compelling need to end suffering, not only for ourselves, but for all others. And in Buddhism, we call this particular form of compassion bodhicitta, the wish to reach enlightenment or the end of suffering for the benefit of all others. And that goes to answering the question of what that I posed at the beginning of the course. I posed a series of questions, which we're going to circle back to here as I move on. But that answers the question of what is compassion really? It can take all kinds of forms, but from a Buddhist point of view, it is this, it is bodhicitta. And it's one of the two wings that make up Buddhist practice. So one is practicing bodhicitta, ultimate compassion, and the other is doing it through the lens of the wisdom of understanding the true nature of how things really work, or what we say, we express as the wisdom of emptiness. Having both of those operating in our practice, and there are practices that Buddhism offers to help us develop those two wings so we can take flight, that we reach an end of suffering and find that interconnectedness with all things. So again, to be clear, this type of compassion we're talking about is called bodhicitta, and it arises only directly in connection and in dependence on that knowledge of how things really are. I can't underscore that enough. So I know I'm repeating myself, but it's so important. And it goes with how everything is simply a matter of dependently arising moment by moment. We want to reach a place in our conscious movement through time and space, moment by moment, where we have the presence of bodhicitta, ultimate compassion, through the lens of seeing it with the wisdom of emptiness operating. This is what opens the door to connecting us, sort of ending that suffering existence driven by that lack of clarity of not seeing things how they really are. And it's also ties back to the first part of the course where I talked about this sort of walled off way that we exist, even externally, when we talk about observing how we are not connected to everything, even though science even tells us that we are. And the whole goal of Buddhist practice is to find that interconnectedness. And by doing certain practices, this is called the path. I use a capital initial P when I say path there. And that goes to the Buddha's fourth noble truth, which is a path to liberation, meaning where you can do certain practices that actually end suffering. That's a pretty amazing thing from my point of view. And these practices help us reduce our mental afflictions, especially the three poisons. And by doing so, one gradually develops wisdom. This isn't something that's going to happen like that, although maybe for some of us that could happen. For me, it didn't happen like that. It happened through doing the practices. So it might seem like an obvious statement, but that's really what you're doing. It's a very tangible, hands-on set of practices one can do to literally reduce the mental afflictions, especially the three poisons. So to be clear, these practices are a direct antidote to self-centeredness, and they result in our experience of walled off suffering, ending that, reducing that, eventually ending that, and opening up our experience of interconnectedness. And that's how it ties into even quantum mechanics, in terms of those conceptions of the potential that's there, and that even quantum mechanics shows us, and it's specifically in the form of superposition and non-locality, that we can become fluid, not locked into our limited moment-by-moment experience, whereby we are constantly collapsing. Remember that concept of like when we take the potential that's there and we observe it, whatever that object is, we collapse all the potential into just one single thing. And that's done within our own moment-by-moment conceptual grasping onto that thing. And what happens when you open up by using certain practices of compassion through the lens of seeing how things really are, we start to break down that collapsing process and discover the potential that is there. We're not limited to our just singular individual, John and each one of us individually, how we experience moment by moment reality in a mistaken way. So that's why I even brought in the whole concept of quantum mechanics, because for some of us, some of those concepts could seem, fantastical, scientific, and if any of you are fans of many contemporary superhero films like Marvel films or DC comic films, they talk about entanglement and they talk about quantum reality and multiverses. Facebook even changed the name of its company based on that principle. So it's something that might be familiar to a lot of us in a fantastical way, but it is available to us through actual practices that we can gain, that we have available to us in Buddhism. And through these specific practices, what actually happens? Most important, to try to ground this in reality, one can reduce one's mental afflictions. Again, I talked about how we have a sense of, all of us have to some degree, a sense of feeling isolated. That lessens. We feel less loneliness. We feel less anger. We feel less jealousy, less hatred, less judgment, less sadness, and all the other mental afflictions. At the same time, what arises and increases in us, sort of in its place, are the qualities of feeling much more connected to ourselves, others, the world around us, experience more love and kindness, more peace, more understanding of others, more happiness and contentment. Indeed, all of the 84,000 mental afflictions are reduced, and in their place arise the opposite. This is a very tangible result that can happen. And there are even, as we talk about the sort of fantastical sort of side of like what we were discussing in quantum mechanics and has been explored even in, like I say, contemporary films, in Buddhism, there are still other specific practices that one can experience where one can attain what are called the ordinary siddhis. That's SIDDHIS, not cities like, cities like urban areas. And these are experiences that are actually available to us through practice. And they're not a goal in Buddhism, but they are something that one, through certain practices, can develop. So when we see some of these things that happen with, like, in these, especially like in contemporary films, like Marvel films and Some of these things are part of like getting into that fluidity of the potential of all things. And ordinary siddhis in Tibetan Buddhism aren't, like I said, never the goal, but they are a result of practice. So some of those, just to mention them, there are like sort of the 8 ordinary. And the fact that they're labeled ordinary means that they're not the goal, but they are, from our point of view, supernormal. Deathlessness, which is the power over lifespans, invisibility, invincibility, being able to be present any place at any time, the ability to fly, the ability to move through solid objects, the power over beings in the underworld, clairvoyance. There are variations on these in terms of the siddhis, if you will, in terms of how they're expressed in a conceptual way. But the point in mentioning them is that practices that are present in Buddhism that deal with the 2 wings of compassion and wisdom can have an effect and transformation of your life on a day-to-day ordinary basis, and can even have sort of extraordinary supernormal transformations occur. Again, not that that's really a goal. So depending on where one is in one's life and interest and goals, you might want to work with yourself and your moment by moment reality where you feel some of these negative states of mind, be aware of them and work with them. The key to that is working with compassion-based meditation practices through the lens of understanding how things really are, dependent origination, in other words, or the knowledge of emptiness. So when we go back, in sort of summation, and going back to the questions we asked at the beginning of the course, what is compassion really? That was the first question I posed. And through the lens of what we talked about over these last 3.5 sessions, the answer would be, it is that which arises out of wisdom of understanding how things really are and knowing how there is a way to change them. This is the motivation. This is what compels us to move actively to do for not only ourselves, but for others, activities that help end that mistaken way of seeing things and living. And again, as I said, this is called ultimate compassion or bodhicitta. And then to that second question, which is, what is the source? What's its source and how does it exist in us? I try to hint at that by talking about modern cosmology and astronomy, where everything that makes us up literally is everything that there is in existence, and everything that is in existence is in us. We are naturally all made up, 100% of the stuff that makes us up, that's within our hearts. It's what we call in Buddhism, Buddha nature, the potential for singularity of self in all existence, the end of suffering existence. That's the potential that we have. That's its source. It's already in us. And if it's already in us, how do we develop or unlock it was the next question. The answer to that is by practicing compassion, specifically bodhicitta, informed by the wisdom of emptiness. And then that next question, which is, how is it deployed? And the answer to that is its independence on certain meditation practices that reduce the way we mistakenly experience all things. And through that arises and opens our hearts to the quality of compassion or bodhicitta. And that's where the transformation takes place, that the deployment takes place. So all these questions bring us to like trying to see that Buddhist practice offers these two wings of activities that we can do in our daily lives in the form of certain meditation practices, to develop these two wings of compassion and wisdom. Specifically, again, bodhicitta and emptiness. And to the next question, because I'm going back and giving an answer to all those questions I posed in the beginning so that we don't forget that's what we were trying to accomplish here. The next question was, how is it experienced by ourselves and others? And this happens in a very tangible way. We can experience both that inner and outer moment by moment reduction of our mental afflictions, which we talked about, and in their place experience an increase in happiness. His Holiness talks about that all the time, not only temporally, but permanently, which is in Buddhism what we call reaching a state of enlightenment. And then to the last two questions that I posed at the beginning of the course, why does it matter whether we are compassionate or not? Well, to end all suffering permanently and gain happiness eternally, not only for yourself, but for others, does that qualify as mattering? I'll leave that to you. And the final question was, what difference does it make? Well, hopefully it should now be somewhat clear what difference it makes. It's a rhetorical question. I don't think it requires much more be said. So that's really how I bring to summation here in this final session, how one can skillfully look at even the outer, we call them the outer sciences that modern science, specifically cosmology, the physics of cosmology and astronomy, and then also quantum mechanics, can show us that it doesn't have to be a fantastical reality that is only exist in thought experiments, as it's called in quantum mechanics, but can be applied through specific centuries-old Buddhist practices of compassion and wisdom, to bring forth a tangible change that we can experience in our daily lives. It doesn't have to be like as I said, a fantastical thing that we just see like in a movie or experience in some other intellectual way. I like to underscore that these kind of practices are available to us through certain meditation practices. So as I say that, one might start to say, well, like what specific meditation practices should I be doing? And remembering that the two wings of practice that I'm underscoring here that allow us to take flight in this way are centered on compassion and centered on understanding how things really work, which we would call, emptiness practices, meditation practices. So there are many. In the last course that I taught in the last winter session, we explored specific emptiness meditation practices. I would refer you back to that course in terms of trying to access some of those. There are many, but let's not forget our good friend that we discovered in this course, Nagarjuna, who is really the father, if you will, in the Buddhist, traditional Indian Buddhist tradition of putting a spotlight on emptiness and providing to us many texts and commentaries and verses that we can use to bring into meditative practice. One of those is the text that I made as a secondary text for this course, which is Nagarjuna's 70 stanzas of Buddhist psychology of emptiness. But there are 4 or 5 standard texts by Nagarjuna. The Fundamental Wisdom of Middle Way is a very important one that one can explore and take onto the meditation cushion. And there are, like I said, specific meditation practices that I shared with those who took the last course I did in last winter. And then in terms of compassion training, there are so many. Many can be found in what's called the mind training practices that are what are called Lojong practices. And there are there are a number of publications in English that give us access to those meditation practices. But for today, I'm going to share with you a compassion-based meditation practice that is very foundational, and I highly recommend it. I make it part of my daily practice that I believe can help open up for you a lot of what we've been discussing here in terms of compassion. And I'm going to walk us through this meditation, and I'll also make it available to anyone who wants it. You just have to email me, because I don't have everybody's email. I have some, I know a lot of you, I have your email, but if you'd like it, I gave you my email at the beginning of the class. Again, it's jcerullo13@gmail.com. And I'll send it to you, because part of this particular meditation that we're going to end our series with is not only a meditation practice, but almost as important. I will end that meditation practice by framing out for you how you should actually do a meditation practice. So, for example, in the last 3 sessions of this course, we ended each one of them with a meditation. They were really not meditations in the proper sense of the way you should do a meditation, because we didn't have time. Literally, it's about time. And a proper meditation, such as the one we're going to do today, needs to be done over the span of months. And I'll tell you the reasons why when we do it. So those previous meditations I've done were meant to give you a taste of the topic, not so much the way that one should properly do a meditation. So I feel ending this course with not only doing a compassion-based meditation, and ultimately one that I feel is very foundational in compassion training practices, should be underscored with the modus operandi, the way to do an actual, any meditation practice, whether it's on emptiness, compassion, or any other topic. So we're going to do that now. And again, we will not take the full length of time that's required. It's more to give you a taste of the specific meditation topic. And then I'm going to go back to sort of a teaching moment where I frame out for you how it should be done. And for any of you who want that, I have that all written down, and I will share that with you so that you can maybe take that with you if you feel it might be valuable, kind of like a gift at the end of this course. So we'll do that now, and then if we have some time, we'll leave time for a few questions. So without any delay, we're going to do now a meditation on what's called the 4 immeasurables. So try to just put yourself in a state where you focus on your breathing, where you dissipate out of your mind all of what you've just been listening to, in the sense that you leave room for the guided meditation that's forthcoming to come in. And start by just sitting comfortably, focused on your breath going in and out as a method for calming your mind. And allow yourself to hold the idea that interconnectedness is possible. And that it's possible by potentially breaking down the walled off, self-centered, normal experience that we carry through grasping to certain things and having aversion to other things, which in our normal experience causes discrimination and many other what we label and call mental afflictions. And one way to potentially do that is through trying to reduce that experience. And one way that that might be possible is through certain what we call compassion-based meditation practices. So allow yourself to just sit on that foundation that that's possible. And follow the following verses. The first verse allows us to develop equanimity. May I be free from preference and prejudice. May I know things just as they are. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. May I see into whatever arises. This verse is the verse that explores equanimity. The next verse explores loving kindness, the second immeasurable. May I be happy, well, and at peace. May I open to things just as they are. May I experience the world opening to me just as I am. May I welcome whatever arises. This is the second verse called loving kindness. The following is the third verse on the third immeasurable, which is compassion. May I be free of suffering, harm, and disturbance. May I accept things just as they are. May I experience the world accepting me just as I am. May I serve whatever arises. This is the verse on the immeasurable called compassion. The fourth verse is the immeasurable of joy. May I enjoy the activities of life itself. May I enjoy things just as they are. May I experience the world taking joy in all that I do. May I know what to do, whatever arises. Thus completes the 4 verses on immeasurable, the 4 immeasurables. So bring your focus back to your breath, allowing yourself to come back to the Zoom chat we're having. And I'll end today's session by walking us through what I mentioned before the meditation, which is a guideline for this particular meditation practice on the 4 immeasurables, but one that you can apply in general to any other compassion meditation practice, and in many ways to any other meditation practice. So typically what we do in this type of meditation practice is we divide it into 3 sections. The first section should be 15 to 20 minutes. And basically, this is the time that the body, the mind, and heart take to settle down from the activities of whatever we've been doing. So obviously we haven't done that in this meditation practice that we just did, or the ones we did previously, and I alluded to that earlier. So this time is to allow you to rest simply in your experience of your breathing or some other method to let you settle. I like to use the breath, and so many meditation teachers do, because as it relates to this course, it tunes us into the cycle of the Kala Chakra process. The moment before a breath is the voidness. Taking in the breath is the arising. And then the moment at the top of that breath is its sustaining. And then the exhaling is the dissipation, and which is the life cycle of the universe, of our life. Every breath is a life. And so it can allow one to sort of settle in that frame of reference. That is specifically what this course was about, but in general can be used in that way to be beneficial for the beginning of any meditation practice. And in the second section, the main part of the meditation session, you recite the lines of the verse you're using to meditate on very slowly, one by one. And then with each line, after you recite it, you experience what reaction arises. You could say arises in your mind, but it could also be something you feel in your body. So how does your body react to the line? What emotion arises, and what stories start to run? And you do not try to change your reaction. You're just open to the experience of them. Reaction of body, mind, heart. And then when you have said all 4 lines in the case of this meditation practice, 4 lines grouped together, you rest for a few minutes, not like we did today where we just moved on. And you experience collectively from those 4 lines what arises. And if nothing arises, it should not go without saying that you can just rest. But try to stay focused, at least on your breath moving in and out. Then say each line of the verse again, slowly as before. Repeat this process for the main part of the meditation session. So now we're talking about the second part, right? And then about 10 minutes before the end of the session, you let the verses go. What I mean is you just rest. You don't fall into distractions. Don't try to control your experience. And don't work at anything. If you need to, just rest in the experience of breathing. So that frames out for you what a meditation session should look like and how it should be experienced. Again, applied to the 4 immeasurables here, but also could apply to any meditation. Now, specific to the 4 immeasurables, I have to underscore that these verses are not aspirational. What do I mean? Each line will put you in touch with the parts of you that are open or closed to the particular immeasurable. As you experience the reactions in attention that I described you should try to do as you work your way through, the energy in the reactions, get this, is gradually transformed. The energy in the reaction, your reaction, is gradually transformed into the immeasurable. That's what I mean by it not being aspirational. It can be literally transformative. So you don't try to chart your progress. The process isn't linear. But it is an important aspect of how, if one does a practice with an awareness of how things really are, that they're not fixed, they don't have inherent self-existence, including your own self. Doing a meditation practice, whether it's on the 4 immeasurables or something else, can have that transformative effect. And it's not an effect. It's not like a thought. It's not an aspiration. It's something that can change you. And specific to the 4 immeasurables in this meditation, when you can feel the immeasurable in you consistently in your practice, and you find that it arises naturally during the day, this is for yourself, then you can start to extend the immeasurable to others. This is where bodhicitta comes in. You begin to extend by changing, get this, each line of the verse to, may all those close to me. And then finish the line, may all those close to me. And you may find a very different kind of reaction arising with this. I will predict that you will. And don't be too concerned about defining exactly who's close to you. We all feel closer to some people than others. Just allow that to be what you experience. The idea of all those close to me, not specific people you try to pull in or pets or whatever. Then, that's not where it ends. When you've stabilized this step, then you extend the focus to, may all those who are suffering, and then complete the line. may all those who are suffering. Then you can continue the extension to people in the world for whom you have no strong feelings whatsoever. And eventually, to people whom you, even as you conceptually move moment by moment through life, where you label them with dislike or that you have little respect for. Maybe think of certain historical figures even who have done great atrocities, or certain, political figures you don't agree with, or whatever. And you change the wording of the verses accordingly. Eventually, you culminate the immeasurable for all beings. So the words change to may all beings. And then you fill in the verse and do all four sets of immeasurables with may all beings. So you work with each immeasurable. Here's my prescription to you as Dr. Cerullo. You work with each immeasurable for at least a month so that you have a clear experience of it. The key is developing an experience of it. And at least with respect to yourself, to you. And then if you can, roll out that expansion of the immeasurable to, as I described, in that stepwise fashion. And as I said, if you do this sort of process with this meditation practice, you are engaging in not only compassion for yourself, but eventually expanding it to all sentient beings. Then you are practicing compassion for all others. You are then practicing bodhicitta from a Buddhist labeling point of view. So this is a meditation practice, the four immeasurables, which can truly be immeasurable if you could apply it not only to yourself, but to all sentient beings, starting with yourself, and then people close to you, people that you just acknowledge as suffering, and then to people you feel maybe indifferent towards, don't even know, and then even those that you even have aversion towards. What is this tuning into if you think about it? You're tackling the three poisons, right? People you feel adverse towards, people you feel attracted to, people you feel indifferent towards. You're developing equanimity, but not in this sort of like, I don't care about anybody. It's that the opposite of that you have deep concern and care for everyone, informed by how things really are, and that our mistaken way of experiencing things causes suffering, and we want to help people. We want to help transform that out of our lives. So this is how I end the course with this meditation practice, and then the specifics of how to conduct it. We're at 11:18. So let me just see if anybody has any. I have a couple of questions here on the chat. One is very practical, bring us back to earth here. From Lindsay, who says, I haven't been able to find the DNKL bank account details on the website to make an international bank transfer. Do I need to email the center? I don't know. I'll have to ask Gloria and see if she's in the course, I think. So I'm not sure if she knows the answer to that. But we'll have to get back to you on that, Lindsay. Maybe send me an email with that question, and then I'll follow up with you.
Yeah, and
you've
I can
got my
look into it,
email.
John.
Yeah.
Gloria, go ahead.
No, I was saying if you send me the details or send it to John, he can send it to me. I can look into it.
Yeah, let's do it that way, Gloria, because that way
Yeah.
you don't have to be tossing your email address out there to everybody.
Yeah, no worries at all. I'm really happy to take care of that.
Yeah, I will be very happy to take care of that. And then Yeah, and then there's a question for a comment from someone who says the lineage I'm familiar with starts with one's enemies, then self. Yeah, I have been practicing the four immeasurables for so long. I literally have I would say I literally have I don't know, a dozen or more sets of the four immeasurable in verse form that have different order to them. And that is something that I think, as long as that the verse that you work with in meditation has all four of the immeasurables, and then unfolding the meditation as it relates to either yourself or to others, this is something that you should allow it to be what works for you. I wouldn't change something you're familiar with, especially if it works for you. So what I'm giving you as a guided meditation is not concrete, and meaning like the only way to do it, but it does have to have the necessary ingredients, right? So I think enough said about that. Does anybody have, Karen, you have a question? You have to take off your mute.
Okay. The two wings, compassion and emptiness. Bear with me. I'd like to use a recent real life example on meshing those two. We had 16 inches of snow yesterday. We have people, neighbors, elderly neighbors down the street that we go and help because they can hardly move. So that being said, and I think about it before I go down, I say, and I do feel compassion for them. I feel compassion. And I think before I go down, okay, through my effort of going down there to help them, giving and kindness, to help them with shoveling, may I bring some happiness into their lives, take away some of their suffering, and may I become a Buddha for the benefit of all. So if I'm trying to combine the two wings, am I now also saying they're just not down there by themselves waiting for me to come down? Am I saying this whole situation has risen independent arising upon the kleshas ripening right now? And that's why this is happening, giving me the opportunity to do this. And how else am I bringing emptiness into this whole equation, this whole situation?
Yeah, it's a good example because, go ahead.
What in everyday realistic things like that, like how now am I seeing this so that I can combine those two, like in just everyday realistic situations?
Yeah. It's a good example because of what you just said, which is I'd like it to be grounded in everything we talked about, to move out of the realm of intellectual pursuit and understanding. There's nothing wrong with that, but to bring it into the realm of experience where it can actually be utilized to your benefit and to others. Really, it goes back to what we talked about a little bit last week, which is karma and the process of karma. Karma is something that, as we are in the now, in the moment, now, in the next moment, the next moment, the next moment, the next moment, it's relentless. It's ripening of something we've already done, right? So in the context of that, we try to remember that that's grounded, your moment by moment experience, in something that was created through the moment by moment process previously of your consciousness mistakenly engaging in attraction and aversion through the lens of ignorance, the three poisons. And having that awareness in whatever you're doing in the next moment, in the next moment, in the next moment, and it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, the daily activities that you describe, doing something for someone, knowing that that is what you're trying to change, and that what you're experiencing is the ripening of something that is rooted in that, meaning the three poisons, that holding in your mind that that's not how things really are, that it's really, as we describe the wisdom of emptiness to be, then that will imbue, if you will, what you do with your thoughts, with your speech, and with your actions, a changing of your current moment by moment karmic creations, your kleshic seeds that are your karmic seeds, your kleshas that are being newly planted in your consciousness, if you will, to concretize it. And the goal of that is to, the word I used a bunch of times in today's course, reduce ignorance, not just the mental afflictions, but the seed of the root problem, which is ignorance, doing activities of body, speech, and mind ignorantly. So this is what we call in Buddhism collecting merit. And the more we reduce our mistaken way of experiencing moment by moment reality, and it's imbued with doing things with a heart that is trying to benefit others, then we're practicing those activities of body, speech, and mind, which are for the benefit of others, through the lens of understanding how things really are. You are practicing the two wings of Buddhist practice. So it's really holding in your mind how things really are as you take your every breath and experiencing new activities of body, speech, and mind, including helping people in the way that you just described. So it isn't a mysterious or hocus pocus or elusive thing. It is hard to keep in your mind because habitually we don't do that. But one does emptiness meditations to help develop an ability to reduce the mistaken way of experiencing things that way, and then carry them off the cushion and bring them into our moment by moment experience in life. Hopefully that's helpful.
It is. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. So another question came through to me on the chat saying, if time, please, meaning, well, let me read it. If time, please, could you expand on consciousness moves into time and space? Yeah, it's a tough one because consciousness is, from a Buddhist point of view, consciousness is something that has the quality in terms of its nature of being empty. And having the quality of being empty, like everything, is actually has the quality of being empty. And more accurately, it's a negation that everything, including self, including consciousness, does not have inherent self-existence. It's the negation of that is emptiness, rather than a positive affirmation of having a quality. But to state it conceptually, consciousness having that quality is that state that in the Kala chakra system that's the stages of voidness or emptiness, followed by abiding, arising, abiding, and then destruction. Then consciousness moves into time and space is that moment when one moves from that state of emptiness into the realm of, through the force of projecting karma, into the realm of time and space. In Buddhist cosmology, there's a whole system of a consciousness moving. This is after death. and this goes to the cycle of the 12 links of dependent origination, the endless cycle of dependent origination, the consciousness literally moves out of a state of emptiness, forced by its projecting karma to go through what's called the bardo, or intermediate stage of existence, and then moves into a new life. That's a whole nother process to talk. It's a whole nother set of details to talk about. But remember, the tricky thing here is that your question goes to talking about something conceptually that really goes beyond experientially goes beyond the realm of conception. So putting it into that sort of container that the Kala Chakra gives us in an expansive cosmological way, and reducing it to like an individual consciousness experience is similar, but it is difficult to talk about it beyond that. So I just, hopefully that helps a little bit. Then another question comes, is potential here what I think was Carlo Ravello refers to as disintegratedness? Yes, I mean, it's probably a whole nother conversation to have, because there is some difference just in terms of the way it's conceptualized, but in essence, it is very similar. Because of shortness of time, I don't want to go too much detail from there. Any other questions from the room? No other questions from the room, I don't think. Okay. So I want to thank everybody for being part of this series and attending. I will end our session with a traditional Buddhist prayer that is meant to bring whatever we have discussed and put our effort and focus towards, whether in the meditations or listening to what I've been talking about, or me teaching what I attempted to teach here. It sends it appropriately out into the universe, if you will, to all other sentient beings. So bear with me. I'll do it in English. This is the Bodhicitta prayer. May the precious supreme Bodhicitta arise in those in whom it has not yet arisen, and where it has arisen, may it not decrease, but ever increase more and more. And then we'll end it with a dedication of virtue. By this virtue, meaning what we've attempted to bring forth here with the right motivation and intention for the benefit of all others with bodhicitta in mind, by this virtue may all beings perfect the accumulation of merit and wisdom and achieve the two holy bodies that arise from merit and wisdom. So that's a traditional way to end any teaching where we do a dedication like that. So I feel compelled to do that. So I thank everybody for being part of this series. I hope you got something out of it. Any questions or confusions or objections or challenges, anything that may come to mind that you feel will be beneficial to you to have further dialogue with me about, feel free to email me, and we can engage in healthy dialogue. Dharma discussion and questions and debate are all part of tradition of what we do, and especially in the Gelugpa school of Tibetan Buddhism. So I welcome that with open arms, if you will. So thank you all again. I'm very, have much gratitude and appreciation for you taking time out 4 Sunday mornings in a row to be with the group today, with us over this past month. And yeah, that's it. Nothing else to say except everybody be well and have a good Sunday.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
John.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
John.
everyone. Be well. Take care.
Thank you, John.